Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Fair M, and today we get to hear from Zweno, who is the king of Denmark, otherwise known as Blanche's dad. So we've got a lot that we need to get through because we're going to hear from Zweno in Act 3, Scene 5, and yesterday we just got through Act 3, Scene 2. So we've got some stuff that we need to catch up on. The real quick bits of things are that Mariana and Blanche have decided to do a switcheroo on William so that Blanche can have William and Mariana can stay with Lubeck. M has decided that she knew previously, but she doesn't want either Mountney or Vallingford. She pretended to be blind and deaf in their presence to try to scare them away, but the one that she's really interested in, Manville, has kind of given up on her because she noticed that these other men existed. So anyway, that's kind of where we are. Act 3, Scene 3 is a really brief scene between William and Blanche because they are now at the appointed meeting place that Mariana set up with William, and Mariana was like, oh, I should go in disguise because it'll be easier to sneak me out, because Mariana actually, remember, is Swedish or from Swethia, and she's being held prisoner here in the Danish court. So she's like, it'll be easier to get me out of here if I'm in disguise, but really she wants the disguise so that Blanche can go instead of it having to be Mariana. So Blanche goes and meets William and they're in disguise and he's like, okay, yes, let's get out of here. Let's go. I've got a boat. We're ready. Let's do this thing. And she's like, just real quick, you're not going to try to sleep with me before we get to England and we're married, right? And he's like, yes, I promise. I'm not going to try to sleep with you until we're married, but we got to go like now. Let's go as fast as we possibly can. That's Act 3, Scene 3. Act 3, Scene 4 starts out with Manville talking to the miller, and he's like, you know, I'm kind of not sold on your daughter anymore because there's these other guys. And the miller is trying to defend M against Manville's suspicions, but then Vallingford and Mountney arrive, at which point the miller is like, hey, Trotter, go get my daughter. And Vallingford and Mountney come in, and they're like, we need to talk to you about your daughter. She seems to have become suddenly deaf and blind, and we're a little concerned about that. And the miller's like, what? And then Trotter and M come back in, and M is sort of leaning on Trotter, and she sees them, and she's like, oh my goodness, these two clowns again? And then she turns to Trotter, and she's like, you got to just go with me on this. Just promise me that you're going to go with me on this. There's going to be some weird stuff. Just verify everything that I say is true, right? And Trotter's like, well, I'm not really a fan of lying. And she's like, but if you love me at all, please do this. Please just have my back on this. And he's like, okay, fine. So she comes in and she puts on this blind and deaf act. And I picture her doing it really big. And it's funny that she's also sort of responds to what the other characters are still saying if she's deaf. But anyway, she comes in and she's like, you know, is that you, Father? Is that you, Father? And then she's like, oh, I don't want to be here on display for people to gawk at me. So please let me go back inside. So the miller and Trotter and M go back inside with everybody now convinced that she has actually become deaf and blind, or at least most of them are convinced. And Manville is like, well, okay, if she's deaf and blind, then I kind of dodged a bullet. Like, she's not the right wife for me. So never mind this. I'm out. And he leaves. And then Mountney is like, oh, well, she was pretty, but she's deaf and blind, so I'm going to go back to helping William because that's why I originally came in here. And he leaves. And then Vallingford is left on the stage by himself, and he's like, okay, so my rivals are gone, and I bet she's faking this. So time to get back to the wooing. And that's the end of Act 3, Scene 4. So I imagine people having a lot of fun when they perform that scene, and I'm sort of sorry that there's no monologues in it and we have to just sort of breeze through it in this overview of stuff. So then finally, we've made it to Act 3, Scene 5, which is between Zweno, the king of Denmark, and Lubeck. And Zweno starts the scene by saying, well, Lubeck, well, it is not possible, but you must be consenting to this act. Is this the man so highly you extolled, and play a part so hateful with his friend? Since first he came with thee into the court, what entertainment and what countenance he hath received, none better knows than thou, in recompense whereof he quits me well to steal away fair Mariana, my prisoner, whose ransom being lately agreed upon, I am deluded of by this escape. Besides, I know not how to answer it when she shall be demanded home to Swethia. So Zweno is not happy. Remember, Zweno is Blanche's father, and Mariana is kind of a prisoner in his place. And he kind of knew that, Lubeck and Mariana were a thing. But then, this other guy, this Robert of Windsor, shows up with them, and he's like, he can't fathom that William / Robert of Windsor and his daughter and his prisoner Mariana would have run away together, and Lubeck wouldn't know anything about it. So he's like, no, there's no way that you weren't in on this whole thing. You've been with him the whole time. You know him better than anyone. You know exactly what he's been doing the entire time that he's been here. You were the one that came in here and said that this was a great man and so wonderful and everything, and now you're treating me so horribly to steal away my prisoner who we just agreed on a ransom for? And also, what am I supposed to say to Swethia when they say it's time to return her? Because she's not here. I don't know where to get her. And Lubeck is like, I promise I knew nothing about this. Let's go find her, whatever. But then a messenger comes in and is like, actually, Your Highness, it's your daughter Blanche that's missing, not Mariana. And both Zweno and Lubeck are like, what? Now Zweno is even more angry. Lubeck is a little bit happy because Mariana at least isn't gone and, his lover is still around. But Zweno will unleash his full wrath in the form of a monologue that we will get to hear tomorrow. So I will see you then for that. Mwah.